Yes, the honourable member for Christchurch East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have not been able to take my seat for the last couple of days because I've been battling this flu going around. But I've followed the debates very, very, very keenly. And I must confess that I think Barbados is now placed on the beginning of a new era of development. The honorable member who just took her seat, a person that I'm very fond of, and one of the endearing qualities of the honorable member for Christchurch West is that she is the shepherd of her own ideas, not afraid to confront the establishment when she needs to, and not afraid, as we've seen today, to lay out what she reflects upon as a plan for Barbados going forward. Now, let me pause to thank the honorable constituents of Christchurch East for having given me the privilege to serve them in this honorable place for the last 10 years. And let me say what a privilege it has been to sit in this honorable place with my colleagues, led by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the member for St. Michael South. And I think what we are now looking at across the aisle is the perfect example as to why the now announced political party for which the member for Christchurch West has taken her seat. Because this parliament has always been known as a marketplace of ideas, where the best ideas contend. Mr. Speaker, it has always been known for robust discourse, where either side has, in the tradition of this House, been prepared to present ideas. I believe the honorable member who just took her seat labels her political party as the United Progressive Party. And she made reference to their leader, who is also sitting in our midst. A lady who has in the past taken her place in this parliament in another chamber. And I don't know what it is about these ladies in that vineyard, but I've always admired her too. I believe that if Barbados is going to move to its next level of development, because don't forget, we are a small island developing state, which should awaken anyone who chooses to follow that Barbados is in a persistent mode of development, in moving from strength to strength, enduring the times of plenty and the times of need. And sometimes we forget that the very inscription of our DNA characterizes our journey as a journey of plenty or reaping, a journey of need or sowing or plowing, which is the most painful part of the life journey of sowing and harvest. And what that tells me, Mr. Speaker, is that there must come a time when the harvest is overtaken by the plowing. And in recent times, sir, Barbados, as is other countries, Barbados has been gripped in a global financial challenge. That cannot be disputed. Only recently, the United Kingdom, after forecasting growth between now and 2020 to only 0.3%, has recently, within the last week and a half, revised that measure to suggest that they anticipate growth should now reach 1.7%. This is the United Kingdom. This is the country who used to own us. This is the country who used to be our colonial master. And in 2018, as is the case with Barbados, who is now forecasting, and first of all, who has indicated growth for the last 3 quarters, and forecasting growth in the new term, in the new quarter, for just around 1%. For some reason, my dear Speaker, sir, for some reason, there are a group of Barbadians who want to suggest that Barbados is doing so badly. As a matter of fact, in this debate, I heard a member from the other side saying that our society is broken. And I want to get to that in a minute. But the Honorable Minister of Finance presented his customary dossier on the performance of the country. In that document, Mr. Speaker, sir, he highlighted what the challenges are, but also highlighted what the victories have been economically. For if you are fallen in a well 60 feet deep, and you are now only 40 feet down in that well, that is a victory. You are climbing out. You can't get from the 60-foot depth to the floor of the well in one shot. You have to climb. You have to exert some energy, persistence, resilience. Those are the kinds of human effort that you have to put in place. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am suggesting that Barbados, not the Democratic Labour Party, certainly not the Barbados Labour Party, not the UPP, Barbados is continuing to suggest that we may be down, but we are not out. We're not out. And I welcome any institution, any organization who is bringing ideas to the marketplace so that those ideas can be contended with, because the solution in moving us from where we are to where we need to become, the solution may well be in the bosoms of all of us. And that is the reality. Anytime that you reach a stage where a political institution is rendering Barbados the nastiest place, the worst place to do business, the dirtiest place on earth, you know, and now that Barbados is so broken that people can't put food on their tables. I grew up in a bar. The reason why some of those persons may be able to say that is because they have not been touched by the Barbados that many of us were touched by. Because I remember growing up in the Barbados, Mr. Speaker, where on a day-on-day basis, somebody in the community would have to give you a whole of cassava, a breadfruit, piece of pumpkin, a few potatoes to carry home to your mother to ensure that by dusk, a meal would be on your table. And they would say, I recall very well, if tomorrow mommy doesn't have enough, come and see us, we will have something to share. That's the kind of Barbados that I grew up in. And we must ask ourselves, in spite of the diversity of our views and divergence of our suggested directions, we must ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, what kind of Barbados do we want to be? We must acknowledge that this state of development in Barbados is not as it was in the 1960s. And what gave birth to independence then, as the travails of a burgeoning society, are not the same issues today. Barbados has become far more educated. Opportunities abound all over this country for persons to pursue their field of endeavor. Yes, the government must continue to look for a diversity of opportunities for our people, and that is why the Minister of Finance has presented this plan to us. Now, I heard somebody on the other side say that this plan is no different from the other 8 plans. But yes, it is different. And what makes it different is the participation of the tripartite system. That's what makes it different. They have come together. And you see, the Barbados Labour Party is caught in a quandary because they don't want to criticize the private sector, but they don't want to endorse the work of the private sector. They don't want to criticize the private sector because they thought that because Barbadians exercise their right and their freedoms to join marches and to get out there and to make their voices heard, they thought that those Barbadians were saying, in essence, we are nothing to do with what the government is doing. We want a road on our own. This document proves differently. This document here, entitled Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018, it has the inscription of not only the private sector, it has the inscription of the workers' representative bodies, and it has the inscription of the government. I have had the privilege, Mr. Speaker, sir, of sitting at tables in discussions with countries the world over. African countries, Middle Eastern countries, European countries, Latin American countries, and Caribbean countries. Whether you're sitting in a discussion on clean energy, whether you're sitting in a discussion on sustainable land management, whether you're sitting in a discussion on global warming, on sea level rise, on protection of the ozone layer, or whether you're sitting in a discussion on the management of pollutants. I have sat there. And I have heard leaders and delegations of countries commend Barbados for the positions it has taken over the years and the leadership it has caused. When I sit down in here and hear members on that side talk about Barbados being the dirtiest country in the world, and I've traveled to other countries, I wouldn't call their names, but I've traveled to other countries, I've seen trash. I will call one name, the United States of America, and seeing trash piled up higher than myself on a daily basis while traveling with the Right Honorable Prime Minister to the United Nations. Every single day. And the only thing that they can talk about the environment in Barbados is that the SSA needs trucks and it hasn't, there are piles of garbage around the island. Mr. Speaker, look, I, along with officers from the Ministry of the Environment, my able team there, have gone out and shown what Barbados is doing. Our work in biodiversity, our work in the green economy, our work in climate change, our work in consumption production, which is at the heart of the generation of garbage. Because as we consume, we produce. And Barbados has continued to provide collection services sometimes twice a week, which is not in the law, for every community. And yes, because of the fact that we may have a shortage in vehicles, we may skip a community here and a community there. The fact is that Barbados has minded its obligation to keep this country clean. But you know, this House restricts us from calling people liars. And it's a good thing that it does. I heard from my radio this morning, the member for St. James Central, correct? St. James Central. Saying that there is a gush of sewage, did he say 6 feet high? 4 feet high on the south coast between Lanterns and Tapas. Now, I drove that same road this afternoon, picked up a couple of individuals, not friends or anything, that were going in that direction. And when they got there, they said, but wait, Minister, could that fella be such a bald-faced liar? Could he be such a liar to say that water is gushing, and the truth of the matter, that the bubbling of the water could not make 2 inches high? I applaud the honorable member for Christchurch West, because in her characterization of her concerns, she ensured that she did not embellish or create a view that is not rooted in reality. I heard another member in here say that no government minister has gone to the South Coast to see what is happening. Again, I didn't ask those 3 passengers to reflect on that, but if they had reflected on it, they would also call that particular member a bald-faced liar. This honorable member, Mr. Speaker, sir, this honorable member accompanied the SSA 11 o'clock at night to commence the sanitization and the deodorizing of that street. I was there on site, led by the engineer of the Sanitation Service Authority, a very competent officer, and some workers who were running the truck, both the washdown truck and the sweeper. The reason why we employed the sweeper was to avoid what the honorable member who just took her seat said. Animals and cats and dogs trapping remains onto the person and going going into their homes and so on and so forth. And I challenge any member. I can tell you what I saw from the Barbados Labour Party. I saw a member in this house dressed up like a mummy with a black rag around her face, slouching in her seat, saying that she couldn't take the smell. And at the same time, took Barbadians up to that site for a public meeting. Now, if up there was so bad for her, every single member of that audience should have had a rag, you could only call it a rag, around their faces, trying to save themselves from this stench. Isn't that reason? Isn't that reason? But the member was posing in the front bench, in the front row, slouched back, with this black rag around her head, complaining about the smell. Well, I have to ask myself, what was she really smelling? Because the closest thing to her nose was the black rag. Mr. Speaker, sir, I walked the street myself. I was there with my workers, and I want to give the Sanitation Services Authority the highest praise for their efforts in helping the Barbados Water Authority deal with that issue. But the issue didn't start with this government. There's an officer in my ministry that I met with only a few days ago who was a project manager on that project and said to me that before the commissioning of that plant, they had problems with the system. There were problems. And in 14 years I almost said of many money, but in 14 years of much money, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Labour Party did not see it fit to address any of the issues that were prevailing before 2008. But all of a sudden it comes to this house, which really is a marketplace of ideas, and putrefies it with nonsense, rumor, and that kind of thing. The South Coast Sewage Project, the Bridgetown Sewage Project, and the West Coast Sewage Project, are all challenging projects for all of us. And as we know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that sewage is not only a challenge for Barbados, a small island developing state. Fort Lauderdale has put on record having 3 years of challenges with sewage on their streets. San Diego, only less than 5 months ago, had problems with sewage on their streets. All systems fail. Sometimes you put down a brand new toilet in your house, you sit on it a couple of times, and before you know, the toilet won't fix it. Isn't that true? Toilet lick up. Brand new toilet, break up. Sometimes you have other systems in your house that's supposed to last for a long time. And because of dysfunction, malfunction, or whatever the case might be, you have to fix them. Then the family is plunged into a crisis because they didn't plan for that. They now have to find the resources to do that. So I am saying that if we really want to talk about where we're going with this country, let us all accept that because of the developmental journey of this great land of ours, that this time of development presents us with different types of challenges. The Minister of Finance presented his vision. He talked about the economy and the need for a new development model for our economic sustainability. He talked about a roadmap, a roadmap that would give attention to not only to the economy, but the society and infrastructure and all of those needs. The United States yesterday allocated $1.3 trillion towards infrastructure development in the United States. But that's not the end of that story. You know what suffered? Social services, welfare, food stamps. All of those services were cut back as a result of introducing that infrastructure package. There still is no agreement because they're saying when you read between the lines that the business community have to contribute 20% of the infrastructure costs in their communities, contending with the issues that face the society. So I am saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we've had a difficult period of development to manage. And as much as the former government talks about how they left the foreign reserves, they left the foreign reserves with a good bundle of money. But they also left the country with a good bundle of debt. So that it would only be a matter of time when all the foreign reserves that were left behind for a rainy day that started in 2007. And I remember moving around my constituency and many of my constituents saying, "You sure you want this thing? No, this thing bad. Y'all don't understand. Why you want it now? Give yourself another year. Let them pay the price for what they've done." That is why I say they were run out of office at a time when there was supposed to be plenty, and to this day they haven't explained to the country, A, why they were run out in a time of plenty, and B, what has changed about them since then. I understand why the honorable member for Christchurch West has taken flight as though she's taken flight on the wings of eagles. I understand why. Because I sat in this house and witnessed her being savaged by that party. Brutalized. Cannibalized. Vandalized. I witnessed it in here, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying to Barbados, you have a choice to make. And your choice is not about how well the economy is doing or not doing. Your choice is about who must lead us into the next frontier. And it cannot be the Barbados Labour Party. You can't mix matters, as they say, you can't mix matters. You've got to separate them. This coming election is going to be about choices. They have poo-pooed and condemned this plan. This is a plan that has the architecture of which is the private sector, the unions, and the government. However you cut it, you have to agree that all ideas contended, and that the private sector, who they thought would be out there galloping behind them. But you know, the honorable member for Christchurch West made it very clear, if you dress a demon in white, it is still a demon. And those will be the immortal words of that honorable member, my friend. I don't care how you address the demon. The honorable member contend, it will still be a demon at the end of the day. That was her contention. This plan, they poo-poo this. They have cursed the private sector, they have cursed the unions, and certainly they have cursed the government, and saying that they have not presented anything worthwhile. The signatures of all those parties are on this document. They call it PIFL, not PEF, PIFL. You know, PEF is what you get when you suck a piece of cake thoroughly. Mr. Clerk, you know that. That is not PEF. So they have put that. But I want to draw the country's attention to the social priorities of this strategy. I have a few more things to say about leadership before I finish. My time
Your time has virtually expired, so you ought to be wrapping up short. I'll give you a couple of minutes.
Virtually? So I have to wrap up.
Yes, you started at 4.
Yes, sir. No contention with the chair.
You take 3 minutes to wrap up.
Thank you. I don't know how anybody in their right mind could accuse the Minister of Education, the Honorable Minister of Education, for being responsible for the disorder in schools, as to say that somehow he is behind the scenes stoking that fire. Our educational system is still the best in the world. And the Honorable Minister of Education has kept that tradition intact by his leadership and his work. I know what's happening in the society, and I contended years ago that the dynamics of family and the dynamics of rearing children has changed. You now have a younger mother, a younger father, that sometimes when they take the kids to school, you can't tell which is which. But apart from the physical inability to physically distinguish them apart, you also have a generation of students who are raised by not only a younger parent, but a younger grandparent. And the virtues that were distilled in us many years ago by our village has been lost. Parents are having to work more, longer hours. Children have now become latchkey children. They are home on their own. And social media has also crept in and distorted a lot of pre-adolescents and adolescents' view of normal development. That's a reality. And the school, the parameters of schooling have not changed significantly to include other types of interventions, because those other types of interventions are costly and would cause to alter how schooling occurs. And therefore, what we are finding, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that there are a lot, that this rude boy, rude girl attitude has set in, distorted these young people during a very tumultuous time in their development, the adolescent years, and they are searching for their own identity. That is what is happening. And that is what confronts the school. And that's what confronts public transportation. And that's what confronts government and government policy. All I would say to Barbadians is this: look after your responsibilities at the home. Send your children to school with high expectations, not to develop high expectations, with high expectations. Find another medium to help them develop the virtues of life, and that will serve them better. Mr. Speaker, my final thought, and I will close. What Barbadians are confronted with in this next election is a choice of who must take us forward. The choice. The choice as it relates to leadership, Leadership that must be values-based. Leadership that must be rooted in humanity. Leadership that must defend men and women in this country. Must embrace the principles of advocating against domestic violence. You cannot lead this country at all. And then when subjects like domestic violence and sexual harassment in the workplace, and those subjects that cut at the heart of the integrity of the survivability of our women, you cannot be a leader of this country and be silent on those issues, Mr. Speaker, sir. You cannot be. Vision, the definition of a vision that it must extend so far beyond yourself that long after you're gone, the vision is still being built out. A visionary leader. A leader with temperament. Not to be rattled by anyone, but to speak when the time of speaking is necessary. Mr. Speaker, sir, I apologize for pressing your indulgence, but I thank you for your time, sir.